things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. And of course, we're talking here about priorities, these elusive items that we find on our business agenda, which we want to use to try and move the business forward. Priorities used well can be a little bit like Archimedes' lever, where he said, give me a lever big enough and I'll be able to move the world. And that's really what we want to try and do. We want to use priorities to move the business forward significantly in the most important areas. So the word priority came into the English language in the 1400s, and it always meant the very first or prior thing. There was only one. It's a singular priority. It's the number one most important thing. Somewhere in the 20th century, we decided it would be a good idea to turn it into a plural and have priorities. So you get this somewhat ridiculous situation now where you might have 15 priorities for a business in one quarter or in 1 year, or you might have 4 or 5 priorities, each with 4 or 5 sub-points, ending up in this situation where we have so many priorities that in fact we have no priority. We don't know what is the most important. So how do we get to that? How do we get to the most important things that we need to do? And I'm going to choose a 3-month period. And in any 3-month period, we would look at it and we would say, well, there's a whole bunch of things that need to get done in that 3-month period. But amongst those things, there's probably 3 things, let's say, that are the most important things that need to get done, the priorities in that 3-month period. And we can take those and we can then think about the time period, and we can allocate the time and say, okay, this is what needs to be done over the period and when roughly we'll get it done. And that could be different, right? So it could be that one item actually stretches over the full 3 months, and one item might only be 2 weeks of the 3 months, like the pink item is. So now we've got a picture of what these priorities look like. But of course, the other items are still there. They're still sitting there and they still need to get done. But by having priorities, we get a whole lot of benefits. We get the benefit of focus and direction because we know what are the most important things. We can manage trade-offs. So if new things come in or suddenly there gets a push for one of those items which aren't priorities, we can say, well, no, actually, this is not a priority. We're going to put our time, resources, people, effort, management bandwidth into the items which we've identified as the priorities. Through that, we get alignment. We can drive alignment, accountability, and we stop the confusion, clutter of everybody busy with everything, overwhelm, unclear objectives, and our inability to say no. So when something comes up which isn't a priority, the answer is no. We're not going to put that at the top of the pile above everything else. We're going to spend our time and resources on the most important things. So prioritizing is a very powerful business tool because it allows us to bubble to the top of the most important things that we need to do. How do we actually describe the priority, these priorities, if we're going to name a couple? Well, let's look at a health example. We might say we want to lose weight and get fit, and that's great. It looks very clear, doesn't it? But we could get a little bit clearer. Instead of just weight, we could say 5 kilograms, and instead of just fit, we could say run 10 kilometers. Both of those make that a lot clearer. So now we know we want to lose 5 kilograms and be able to run 10 kilometers. That's a much clearer priority. But we could push it even further. We could say that we want to do that within the next 60 days. Think about that timeline over the 3 months. Well, this is going to take the first 2 months to get there. And we could even take it one step further and we could say we want to do the 10 kilometers within an hour. So you can see from the first down to the 5th item there, the 5th item is really, really clear. How does this translate into business? Well, in business, we could have a priority such as deliver the new version of the software. Well, actually, we want to deliver the streak feature in the software. New version is a little bit vague. Streak feature is much more clear. And we actually want to do it by the end of the month. All right, but end of the month is also a little bit vague, so we end up with saying, well, actually, we want to do it software for testing by the end of the month and in production by the 15th. Now it's starting to get a little bit wordy, a little bit long, difficult to just roll off the tongue and we know what it is. So we can refine it even more and we can say, have 15 customers using the streaks feature by the end of next month. That's very clear. We know that there's a whole bunch of steps. There's a plan that will sit underneath that. More on that in a minute. But we now know that by the end of next month, we want 15 customers use it. So what we've done is we've effectively made a SMART priority. You'll know this acronym. It's very well known, very well used. But essentially, whether it's SMART or whether you've just described in a way that you know how you've completed the priority or what will be true when the priority is complete, however you do it, it's got to be clear. Right. So I mentioned plan. Let's go back to that. So if we look at this business priority that we got to, the clear one down at the bottom, 15 customers, and you'll recognize it from here because we actually highlighted it as one of the 3 items in that full long list of items to do. So just saying 15 customers using the streaks feature by the end of next month, this is going to take a whole bunch of other steps that need to get it there. So we could, underneath it, have a detailed plan, and that can have in any planning format. You could look at, there's a number of ways that plans can be managed and written. It could be multiple plans, actually. It could be even more complex than this. So that one line, 15 customers using the streaks feature by the end of next month, underneath it, the person who's leading that priority in the business could have their plan, which has KPIs, measures, detailed descriptions, who's supporting, who's responsible, and effectively the action items that make up the 15 customers using the streaks feature by the end of next month. So it's important to highlight this because we don't want to put all the items in the plan into the actual priority. So we might end up then, if we did that, we'd end up with this very long, detailed, and what's difficult with this is it doesn't meet the SMART, and it doesn't really make it easy at the end of the period to say we've done it, because we could look at this and we'd say, well, we've done the internal testing, but the marketing is not quite right and the architecture is not right, and we're not quite there with the final thing, but we've done a lot of pieces, and you end up having this conversation, which is not really useful. It's not crystal clear and succinct. Whereas have 15 customers using the streaks feature by the end of next month is pretty clear. We've got it well defined at a high level, and underneath that can be a plan that handles all the steps to develop it. So, in summary, our priorities are the top 3 to 5 things to do before, above anything else. Write the priorities in a measurable way that makes it easy to evaluate completion success. It should be succinct, easy to read, easy to remember, and develop plans for each priority. And be careful not to dive into the plans every time you review the priorities. You don't need to go through the whole plan. That's a separate, more detailed evaluation of how you're doing on that particular priority. When you're reviewing priorities, you really just need to look at the top item. Just like Archimedes, I hope that your priorities move you forward in a significant way.